Hello there, welcome back to Wizard or Prophet. I am your host. There has been a lot of talk lately, about war. Whether it's World War III, or Civil War, or any other manner of wars, war seems like it is inevitable in this day and age. Let's hope not. Because war brings with it many, many horrors, including starvation. And so I was thinking about that. What kind of recipes would we need during a civil war? And I thought, let's look back to our ancestors, cooking in history. What kind of recipes did our ancestors eat and prepare back in the old days? Let's find out. Ah, yes. Cooking in medieval times. Now, of course, often in medieval times, there wasn't a huge amount of food to be had. Sure, we think of the medieval feasts that kings had. You may realize that not everyone had the same amount of food in the Middle Ages. Oftentimes, we think of Middle Ages as King Henry VIII chomping on the turkey leg and flinging it over his shoulder. But not that many people had that kind of food. You might be a farmer and able to grow your own food, but often you could not. What if you were just a simple peasant? A peasant in a medieval city, like most of us will be in the coming wars. We live in an urban area. We don't know how to grow our own food. We don't know how to prepare anything, and we obviously haven't prepared anything, otherwise we would have food storage. But we don't have these things. So how do they do? Well, today I will be teaching you how to roast. Roasting in medieval Europe. Come with me as we learn the succulent delicacies of medieval Europe. I've put on my apron, which you can see has John Deere tractors on it. Now, I don't have a leather apron to wear or some kind of plain cloth. For some reason, I have a tractor apron, which is weird because I've never driven a tractor. But nonetheless, it is my apron that I use whilst cooking. And today's cooking is going to be very, very interesting. You see, if you weren't a farmer in the Middle Ages, or you weren't wealthy, and you were just a peasant living in a city, there's very little meat you're getting. But one of the meats you can get, or would be able to get quite frequently, is of course rodent. And here we're talking rats and mice. Now, rats and mice are found throughout the world, and especially in urban areas. And especially after war, rats will develop. They will swarm. They will come like a plague of doom to infiltrate our cities and eat what little food we have left. And so it's up to us, as peasantry, to eat them before they eat us, out of house and home. Now, I'm not like Sean Woods, whose property is inundated with rodent infestations, and so I won't be trapping our own meat. But that is what you will be doing, and so I suggest you invest now in mouse traps and rat traps so that you will be able to experience the delicacy of rodent. I, of course, don't have rats in my house or my garage. You can see on my previous video that I cleaned out my garage and there were no evidence of rat or rodents of any kind. But I do know they exist in my area because I've seen them. You live in a town with a river and greenery, you have rats. And so be prepared. Buy your traps now. They're very low cost. And don't get those glue traps. You don't want that necessarily. Just get the nice traps that snap Or you can get one of those barrel traps that will drown the rats or the mice in the barrel. And that way you can just take them out and dispose of them as you will, which in this case means we are going to prepare them for cooking the medieval way. Because I don't have these rodents, I had to go to a place where you can buy rodents, which is the local PetSmart. If you want to be cooking in the medieval way, you should practice this now. So go down to your local PetSmart or pet store. You could go to various pet stores or even online, and you can buy rodents in bulk. Now, most people buy these rodents in bulk to feed their reptiles. Well, I'm going to use these rodents in bulk to feed ourselves. And so I went to the local store. Unfortunately, the only rodents they had here were frozen fuzzies. It's hard, very hard, to roast a frozen fuzzy. But it's not hard to make a popper out of them. This is very easy. And the other thing you can do with these is put it into a stew. These make great stew. Now, the weird thing says these are not for human consumption. Well, nonsense. If it's good enough for a snake, it's good enough for you. Let's come and see how we prepare these rodents. I'm in my garage because my wife wouldn't let me cook rodents in the kitchen. However, if we're cooking like the medieval people, they didn't have modern kitchens and conveniences like we do. Of course not. Their kitchen probably consisted of an open fireplace. They didn't even have a pot to piss in, so to speak. However, I do. I've got this nice cast iron pot, perfect for putting and roasting your mice and your rats. I suggest you pick one of these up. This one is a fairly cheap one. I think I picked it up at a garage sale because no one uses them anymore. So, get yourself a nice pot. We've got our frozen mice here, 15 frozen fuzzies. Let's open them up and see what we're working with. Ourselves up on the tripod so I can use both my hands. So let's see here. We have our Arctic mice. That's the brand. It says for feeding reptiles. It says here, right here, very clearly, do not microwave. Don't microwave your frozen mice. They will explode in your microwave. That's why we want to slow roast them or stew them or make crispy, crunchy poppers. Now these are what we call fuzzy mice. They barely have any fur on them, and that makes them taste better because you don't have to skin them. It's so small like this. When you're roasting them over a fire, you'll find that the fur burns right off, and you'll skin them as you eat them. But essentially what we're going to do is add them to our stew. You're going to put in the mice. You're going to put in all the other things that you have. You obviously don't have anything because you're eating like a pauper during a war like the Middle Ages. And so you're going to go around into your yard and you're going to pick up pine needles for vitamin C. You're going to use dandelions, very bitter but are edible. You might find some cattail roots. Or if you're smart, you've prepared a garden and have grown your own potatoes and carrots and turnips. Turnips seem to be very, very big in medieval eating. I'm not quite sure why. I'm not a historian. But in any case, you prepare that and you add your salt and your pepper. Given that we're eating like pauper, plebeians from the Middle Ages, we don't have pepper. It's too expensive. But we might have some salt. And so you're going to salt that, and also with any herbs you might have in your garden. The traditional way, if we were to have normal-sized rats, is you would get a nice stick. You would pull out your knife, you would whittle that stick into a skewer, you would shove it right down the throat of the said rodent and pop it out the backside and stick it over an open flame and roast it until it is well done and crunchy. Now with the poppers, what you're going to do is you're going to take the mice out of the bag for your own personal eating during your next, let's say you can prepare these for the Super Bowl. And as you're watching the Super Bowl, instead of some chicken poppers, you can have mice poppers. And so what you do is you wash them off, you thaw them out. If you haven't caught your own, you wash them off, clean them up, and then you're going to roll them in some kind of meal. Now, if we're eating like the medievals, we wouldn't necessarily have flour, but we might have a little bit of flour. We might have a little sorghum. We might have some other kind of barley or oats. In any case, you have to mouse around in it. And then you're going to get your pot like this. You're going to put in a substantial amount of lard. Now, in the old days, they just used the lard over and over again, but the lard will go in. Don't be using any seed oils. They didn't have those back then. You might be able to use olive oil, but of course, the burn point and the smoke point of olive oil is very, very low. So if you don't have olive oil, you're going to use that lard. And we're not going to go into rendering lard because likely you didn't render your own lard. You went and bought some at the market, probably getting your money by selling one of your numerous children. So in any case, you put the poppers, you roll it around with a little salt in your barley mix, and then you drop it into the boiling hot lard. All right, there you have it. How to cook and roast and stew your mice. Your rodent stew, perfect for the upcoming Armageddon. This has been Cooking in History. And I'm your host on the Wizard or Prophet channel. We hope you enjoyed this cooking recipe, and we will see you again real soon. Ciao!